Hi guys, Ryuu here from Blender Bros and welcome to part 2 of Machine Tools tutorial for Blender. Now in previous video, part 1, we were discussing the very basics of the add-on and also the pie menu, so if you haven't seen it and you want to watch it, go ahead. There's a link in the video description directly to that video. In this video, we're gonna be discussing all the tools and I hope I can accomplish, all of it in one video. We will see. There's quite a lot of them to talk about. So now we're gonna start with the Smart Vert, and when you select that, you can see on the key maps that you're gonna have all the keystrokes assigned to that tool. So we have 1, Shift 1, Alt 1, Control Alt 1, and Shift Alt 1. Let's just save that and see what this tool does. Just a quick word before we start, guys. I would like to tell you that there is a free course right now you can download and start working on hard surface model from scratch to a final render. And this course utilizes the Machine Tools add-on we're going to be talking right now about, and also utilizes PowerSave, which is a fantastic add-on that we're going to be actually mentioning later on in this video. So if you would like to put the knowledge into practice and start using Machine Tools and get used to add-on workflow, this is your fantastic chance. So go ahead to our website, link in the video description, go to blenderbros.com, download the course and enjoy. So the Smart Vert, basically the very basic concept is to connect vertices. So in vanilla Blender, when you want to connect one vert to another, what you need to do is click on a vert, shift click on a vert you want to connect to or connect with, and you press M and you can choose from the menu what you want to do. If you choose, for example, at last, you will merge them at the last vert selected. If you choose in the center, you're gonna merge them at center, etc. Okay. Now what Machine Tools does, it actually simplifies that to a single keystroke. So when I'm gonna select this vert here and shift select this vert here and press 1, I'm gonna merge them into the last vert. If I'm gonna press shift 1, I'm gonna merge them in the middle. If I'm going to select multiple vertices, it's going to work the same way. So that's the very basic of this tool, right? Regarding merging, there's another technique that you can use with this tool, and it's really pretty intuitive. So let's say you got this dense geo in here, right? And, you want it to, let's say, select a bunch of vertices and merge them to a specific vert, but then you change your mind. So let's say I selected all these vertices here like this with control, and this one is selected last. So when I'm going to press 1, I'm going to always merge to this last vert. However, if I selected, for example, faces on this cube, and I pressed 1, and I hovered the mouse over the vert I wanted to merge to, Machine Tools will allow me to do that. So I can actually select a bunch of faces and merge them to a vert I actually specify myself. So whenever your mouse is, hovering over, you're gonna merge to, which is really convenient. This also works with verts, but you cannot actually have an active vert in a selection. So by active vert, what I mean, last vert selected. So what you could do is deselect everything and use something like, for example, B-select tool, which selects all verts at the same time, and then this tool will, will work like a charm, okay? Or you could use, for example, W-select tool, okay? Or, for example, C-select tool. So another thing that you can do with this tool is actually you can bevel a vert. So normally when you want to bevel a vert, you need to press Shift, Control, B in Blender. But with Machine Tools, you just press 1 and you can do the same thing. It works on geometry, on flat geometry as well, so you can, for example, bevel just a corner of a plane. Of course, it will not work with multiple vertices because then you're gonna start merging stuff, but with one vertex, it's really easy. Okay, so now let's move on. Let's just select everything and let's subdivide that and create a bit of a denser geometry. Now, let's say you wanted to collapse this edge, right, into this edge. What you can do in vanilla Blender is, again, you could do it through Machine Tools as well. Just go to Auto Merge or just simply click on Auto Merge here. GG to slide verts and collapse them and merge them with this, edge here. And now you got one edge of verts. In Machine Tools, what you can do, right, you can do this via selection. So the way you do this, you select one vert, then Shift select another in the line of verts you want to merge. And then in a kind of a U-letter shape fashion, you go around with Shift and select respective verts on the other side. And all you do now is press Alt 1 and you can merge them, okay? Now, if you want to merge to the bottom, so, you know, the other way, you simply go the other way, right, like that, and Alt 1, and you merge, okay? So that's that. Now, if you, for example, have a strip of geo like this, so I'm going to press F to connect these multiple faces into one large face, which will, I will lose all these edges here. If I wanted to rebuild them, I would need to do this by hand. So, you know, click, shift-click, J, click, shift-click, J, or you could, for example, run the tool via hard-ups, the edit multi-tool, press J, and simply click, drag, click, drag, click, and then space. It's a bit quicker. But Machine Tools does it even quicker than that. So what you do is select this one, this one, this one, and this one. So again, the same fashion, U-shape, right? And then you press Ctrl Alt 1 to merge them. And, you know, Machine Tools will fill these gaps here for you with edges, okay? Now, last tool I want to show you is actually a slide tool. It's really interesting. So I'm going to show this on a sphere. And this tool allows you to slide a vertex across a face when there is no edge. You know, normally what I would do if I wanted to slide this vertex somewhere here and maintain the curvature of the sphere, I would need to press GG here, then GG here, GG here. You know, it's just almost impossible to move it somewhere here, right? But with the Machine Tools, what you can do, you can select this vert and Shift select the vert on the opposite side to which you want to slide to. And you press Shift Alt 1 to slide the vert across, okay? Now this Shift Alt 1 tool can be used in an interesting way. Let me show you. I'm going to grab a cylinder and I'm going to grab a cube and I'm going to move this cube up here and I'm going to bevel this cube on it. Right? Now let's say I wanted to align these vertices of this cylinder. So I'm going to Control Alt select them. I wanted to align them, you know, to this flat face here, right? So to this chamfered face. So what you can do is press Shift Alt 1 and start moving your cylinder up. Hold Control to snap it to this face, and this is what's going to happen. Pretty, pretty cool stuff, right? There's another use of this tool. Let me just rotate this cube by 180, and I want to show you on the example of this cube. Let's just move it back to the center of the world by pressing Alt G. Let's create a loop here, Control B to split that loop, and I'm gonna create one more loop here, right? And actually I'm gonna delete these two edges, so dissolve them. Now let's say I wanted to, you know, move this edge. Let's just actually shrink it a little bit, so as wide. There you go. Let's say I wanted to move this edge down, okay? I wanted to move the edge down, maintaining the sort of the curvature of the surface, so sliding it on top of the surface, right? What I could do in Blender is press GG and slide it up and down, right? However, I will not be able to go past this edge, you know, that's one. And also, you can see that the width of this edge is actually changing, right? But if I select these two edges and press Shift Alt 1, I can actually slide this edge up and down, and you can see that the algorithm is very different. And also you can slide it past this edge, which is pretty cool, maintaining this, you know, this slope. And then you can grab your Machine Tools, Shift 1, Shift 1, and then you can clean this geometry with hard ups, and you got a new type of geo, which is pretty bloody cool. So in a nutshell, this would be the Smart Vert tool. It's you know, it takes a bit of getting used to, but once you do, it's extremely powerful. Okay guys, let's continue. The next tool is gonna be Smart Edge. So turn it on, go to key maps, and you can see that you have 3 keystrokes, 2, Shift 2, and Control 2. Let's save prefs, and let's get back here and let's see what it does. Okay, so let's talk about this these shortcuts. So first of all, I'm gonna show you the 2 simpler ones, which is Shift 2 and Control 2. Ironically, they are quicker and faster to explain. So if you select set amount of edges, doesn't matter how many, and you press Shift 2, you'll be toggling on and off sharp, okay? And you can also switch here to, you know, what kind of geometry they're going to affect, chamfer or Korean bevel, because you can create chamfer out of this, or you can create Korean bevel out of this as well, and you can, you know, adjust the amount and everything. So it's a pretty interesting tool, okay? Shift 2 to toggle it back on. Now, Control 2, what will do, it will actually introduce Korean bevel. So, you know, you're going to start beveling this, and then you have some kind of an options here. You can also press Shift 2 to mark this as sharp, and again, you got options here to, you know, to choose from, right? So play with these, quite interesting. Now, Key number 2 is actually quite complex because there's a lot of things you can do with it. In edit mode, when you press 2, you're gonna add a loop. If you press 2 again, you're gonna get 2 loops. And if you press 2 again, you're gonna get a fuck ton of loops. If you have a vert selected, right, one vert, and you press 2, you're gonna start Blender Knife Tool. That's a standard vanilla Blender Knife Tool, okay? Then, if you, for example, have something like a cylinder, and we're going to insert these two faces and delete them. So you're gonna have this, empty space in the middle here. Let me just bevel this so you can see better, okay? There's an empty space in the middle, right? If I select these edges, so, Alt-click and Shift-Alt-click here, right? Hide these two edges. If I press 2, I'm gonna bridge them. Whereas normally in Blender, what you need to do, first of all, you need to install the add-on called Loop Tools, right? So go here, install Loop Tools, and then what you need to do is right-click, Loop Tools, and Bridge, which is the same function. So it's a bit quicker because you press 2 and you're done, right? And then of course you have some other, options here to choose from. To be honest, I don't play with these. Now let's grab a cube, and actually let's grab a plane, and let's subdivide it. Okay, so let's subdivide it and press Shift R a few times. Actually, that's too many. If I select up to 3 edges, okay, so it can be 1, 2, or 3 edges, and I'm gonna keep pressing 2, I can actually rotate these edges, right? This is kind of interesting. So this is pretty cool when you, for example, have, let's say, a face here, you got an edge here going across with a J, and then you're gonna select this edge, and you can, rotate it inside, which is pretty cool. And you can have up to 3 edges, being rotated this way, okay? Another way of using this tool would be to actually select the boundary. So if you, for example, have some geometry selected like this, and you press 2, then you will see that you can actually choose an option here. First, the default one is a boundary, and the other one is adjacent, okay? And when you keep pressing 2, this is actually going to keep expanding. So let me show you something cool, okay? I'm going to grab a plane, and I'm going to subdivide this, and, a few times. And I'm going to select these buggers in the middle, press F to combine them into one face. And when I'm going to press 2, I'm going to be either selecting the boundary of this region or adjacent. And I can keep expanding this and create a really cool, interesting, selection very quickly, okay? So that's that. Also, you can use that, for example, on more complicated geometry. So let's just extrude it and scale it. And let's maybe insert it here like this. And we're going to select this, 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 and then we're going to press 2. And we're going to, choose adjacent. And look what happens. It actually selects, the edges around the selection, which is pretty cool. And you can flip between them. So you can select these or these. So, you have a choice. So let's say I'm going to select all these here, all these faces, and press 2 to select adjacent. I'm going to select all these loops here very quickly, right? So I can flip between this. Interesting stuff for selections. And the last interesting way of using this tool, which believe me, there's more to that. Let's say I'm gonna have this face ripped off the mesh. So Shift D and move it somewhere here. This has to be the same mesh as the main mesh, so it can be a separate mesh, which means this is one object. What you can do is with this face selected, press 2, and what it will do, it will project the knife. Okay, so it will use this plane or face as a knife projection, right? So if I had, for example, cube, and I grab this face and Shift D, Z that, and scaled it, and press 2, I'm gonna have a knife projection on this cube. Now remember, the knife projection, the way it works in Blender, it works based on view. So the way your view is oriented, okay, you're gonna get that knife projection, right? So if I'm gonna be line up here orthographic and press 2, I'm gonna get a projection directly in the middle of this cube. So pretty cool stuff. And regarding this knife projection, so when you cut with a knife, it doesn't go through, right? But you can flip it here to actually cut through. So one more time, Shift D that and scale it, and press 2, and now it's actually gonna cut through. But again, remember, this is view based, okay? So it's not very precise, to be honest. Quite frankly, if I were you, I would be just using box cutter, because who doesn't? I mean, you could just Shift D that cube, Shift select that, and go to Q, and then simply Boolean knife, right? We're gonna get really precise cut. Or what you could do, right? You could just use a Boolean, which is even faster. So you simply use a Boolean, and you just press K, and you're done, right? And the cool thing is that, you know, you can create any types of booleans. So let's say I went to box cutter, turned off the cyclic, created this kind of you know, end-gun situation here. There's B for bevel, you know, and one more time, B for bevel, and simply slice this through, and you're gonna get this kind of a cut through. You know, good luck doing that in vanilla Blender. It's just gonna take you 2 years. So, you know, this is in my opinion far more intuitive way of cutting. This is why I would recommend box cutter for this. Alright guys, the next tool is gonna be Smart Face. This one's gonna be actually quite easy. It's not much to talk about. So in Smart Face, when you, let's say, have, well, let's grab a cube, okay? And let's subdivide it, right? So subdivide it, press Shift R a few times to repeat that. And we're gonna, let's say, remove these faces, right? So, you know, delete them, right? Now, if I wanted to rebuild that in vanilla Blender, it would be a little bit troublesome because I would need to, you know, perform a lot of clicks. But with machine tools, what you do, you select one vert. You could select 2, but you can select 1. And when you press 4, okay, for Smart Face, machine tools will try to rebuild the geometry based on the logic progression of the flow. So I can just keep pressing 4 and it's going to rebuild it. Now the coolest bit about this tool, right, is that it actually works on curved geometry. So if I, for example, had this, you know, had this removed here, so I'm going to delete the faces, right? And I can rebuild this by clicking here in this corner, and I can just, you know, keep rebuilding this geo here. So let's keep going. There we go. And you see that my geometry is being rebuilt in a way that it maintains the curvature, right? So pretty handy, to be honest. So of course you need to follow a certain, you know, a certain order of rebuilding these faces if you have such a large chunk cut out. But if it's a smaller one, it's really easy to rebuild this, you know. So let's say you have, you know, these faces were missing, right? And all you do is just rebuild that. So I press 4, and it's gonna rebuild itself very quickly, which is pretty bloody cool. Alright guys, so let's keep going, and the next one's gonna be cleanup. So let's just create a cube here. And let's go to Edit Preferences and enable Cleanup. Save prefs, and let's go. Now you have some options here. It's a fade time for the clean. I wouldn't worry about this. I just leave it at default. So let's see how this works. Let's say that, you know, we had some subdivided edges here, but let's say we combine these faces into one. And there are some verts left over. Let's say we're going to combine these faces into one as well. We're going to have some verts here. We just, you know, mirror this across, etc. So now if you wanted to run a cleanup, all you need to do is press 3. And that's it. And that literally runs the cleanup. You need to be in edit mode. You don't have to have anything selected. And you're going to see this window here in the bottom, which you can, you know, expand. And you can alter settings. Now, by default, you will be removing any doubles, loose geometry. Loose geometry is, you know, some geometry that floats somewhere in space like this. So when you press 3, it's going to get deleted. Any geo that doesn't contribute to the shape, like for example these subdivided verts here, they're going to get removed, right? And then redundant geometry, which is basically this one, and the cleanup will recalculate normals. So if there's any kind of a normal issue, you're gonna get this recalculated. Now what I would suggest turning on is faces, because when you do that, occasionally you're gonna find yourself, for example, having faces inside of your geo. So let's say you have something here, and you're gonna create a mirror, which is gonna be a bisect mirror like this, right? And you're going to apply this mirror, right? So you're going to apply the mirror, right? And you're going to symmetrize this mesh to the other side. What's going to happen is you're going to have a face inside of your mesh, okay? So it's going to be a face inside there, right? So when you run cleanup, cleanup's going to get rid of it because you selected faces. If you don't, this face is still going to be there. And it's going to create problems with, for example, stuff like bevels, okay? So when you're going to run bevels on this, you might see some problems inside because of, you know, because of this face in the middle. So if I go back and I'm going to have this face in the middle here and I'm going to run a bevel, actually at this point is fine, which is interesting. It's not causing any issues really. But you see there is a face here in the middle, so this could cause problems with your geometry. Let's just close this with 4 and grab a boolean here and switch it to cut. When I'm going to start cutting this, you see now I'm going to have problems because of this face inside, right? So when I'm going to clean that with cleanup, then, you know, I'm good to go. So I would suggest turning on faces. It's helpful. These are, you know, these faces, you'll never see them, so you don't know what the hell is going on with your mesh. And you can just also try other settings here and see what works for you, what doesn't. This is one of the most basic tools that I use for cleaning stuff. So, you know, especially when I run booleans or when I have some kind of issues with after merging geometry, etc., I always run cleanup with 3 because it's so easy, right? Alright guys, next tool is gonna be edge constraint. Now, edge constraint is one of the tools that comes only with the paid version of machine tools. So if you wanna have access to this tool, you're gonna have to pay $10 for the machine tools Deus Ex. If you're an add-on user, or even if you're a vanilla user and you want to use add-ons, I would highly recommend you guys start using add-ons for hard surface modeling. And I would recommend getting Hardops and Box Cutter Bundle, machine tools of course, and other add-ons like Keytops, Cablerator, etc. You can look in my video description, there are links, affiliate links to all the add-ons I'm using and recommending, and I never recommend add-ons I don't use for my workflows, so you can be sure that these add-ons, they are linked in the video description. I use them every day. So check them out. Add-ons are a fantastic way of actually improving the speed and efficiency of your workflow. And let me tell you that the time I save working with add-ons is insane, and time is money. So let's see how this tool works. Now this tool, what it does, it basically rotates a loop or edge around your geo or slides it on top of your geo without destroying the actual shape of it. So in Vanilla Blender, if I try to do that, you see that, you know, weird things are happening. But if I'm going to use the tool, and you can access it by pressing Alt-R, you can start sliding your edge along your geometry without actually it being destroyed, which is pretty bloody cool. If you scroll your mouse, you can enter different ways of calculating this algorithm, right? So I would suggest staying in this direct plane intersection. Seems to be the best one to work with. Now you can move off also, you know, just pieces of edges, right? So Alt-R and you can slide it, or you can actually move multiple edges. So, you know, you could do something like this, right? Then let's say if you had, for example, curved geometry like this, you know, kind of like, you know, a little bit messed up one, okay? So something like that. And you wanted to flatten it on, you know, on Z-axis. If you don't do that manually, SZ0, you know, you see that the shading's gonna, you know, it's gonna shift here. You're gonna destroy the shading. So what you can do instead is press Alt-R and then you press S and you can just, you know, scale it to an axis. You could go SZ, for example, and you could scale it down to an axis, or you could just hold Shift, which will do it for you automatically, okay? And then confirm. In any case, if you want to reset your tool, what you can do is press C to reset it, all right? If you want to switch here pivot to active element, you will start seeing that interesting stuff's gonna happen. So the last selected vert on this edge is gonna act as a pivot point. So if I select it the other way around, so this one's gonna be my last edge, it's gonna rotate on the other side. You could try this on a regular face as well, so not just edges. Well, this is technically a loop, right? So if I go Alt-R and X to constrain it to an axis, you can see that I can do that, which is you know, pretty interesting, right? But you need to have edges to slide on. Each of these verts has an edge to slide on, right? So if you're gonna have some edges in the middle, you know, like a loop or something, that is not really connected to anything, right? It could be a little bit problematic, okay? So, you know, you could press F and try to constrain it to face rotation, but not always works. So there you go, all right? All right, guys, I think that's it. This would be edge constraint in a nutshell. Let's talk about the next option, which is Extrude. It's also a paid version only, so Machine Tools Deus Ex, or you could get this separately as an add-on called Punch It, okay? So Extrude. Now, I don't know if it's different for the add-on itself, but in Machine Tools, I'm unable to actually use the shortcut Shift-E. I think it's only for the add-on. But you can actually bring this option up with Alt-E and go into Punch It. or go into the end panel, go into machine tab here, and it's gonna be here in the bottom, right? Extrude. So now this tool can extrude stuff in a way that Blender cannot cope. Let me just show what I mean. So I'm gonna create some loops here, select everything, and then subdivide it, and Shift R a few times and apply scale. Okay, so now if I wanted to extrude these walls, you know, these faces by pressing E, you can see that we're gonna have some non-manifold geo. Technically, what you could do is go to Alt E and go to Extrude Manifold, which works, but it breaks when you pass certain edges. So when you go deeper, it falls apart again. That's where this tool, this new tool comes in, because when I'm gonna go here, press Alt E and punch it, I can actually cut it really deep. You can basically determine how deep you wanna go with your mouse. So you just, you know, click, click, and you're done, right? It could create some non-manifold geometry. So what I would suggest you do, and you run cleanup with machine tools, just press 3 after you cut, okay? Another cool thing that this tool can do is you can actually cut on curved surfaces. So let me just dissolve these edges. So let me just run a bevel here, okay? And I'm gonna show you. So let's say I wanted to, you know, extrude these, right? Go deep here and extrude them along the normals. So I'm gonna press Alt E, punch it, go in. And now I can choose either press N to go along the normals or A, right? So let's go with N and cut it, boom. And in addition to that, what you can do is actually align it to an edge by pressing Alt E, punching it, choosing the depth, and then holding E or Control, all right? And, you know, hovering your mouse over an edge you want to align to and clicking. And occasionally, in this case, it didn't really produce any crazy faces here, but occasionally you're gonna have some problematic geometry. Let me just try this again. Hold E, align it here, and let's just click it. There we go. And when you get a face like this, what you need to do is press W before you apply it, then click, and you're good to go. And then press 3 to run cleanup tool. You see, removed 6 vertices and I think 6 edges. This tool crashed on me a few times, so I don't know if it's a Blender issue or the tool issue. And I don't know why I cannot use Shift E. Shift E, by the way, is reserved for the crease. Shift E doesn't really work unless, yeah, it doesn't work on faces either. So I think it's a shortcut for the add-on itself. So for the time being, I suppose you're gonna have to go with Alt E and punch it. But you know, it's pretty convenient. Really cool, interesting tool. Next tool we're gonna talk about is focus. So enable it, and on the key maps you can see that it's bound to F, Control F, and Control Alt F. Okay. Let's save it and let's go. So now let's say that I wanted to, you know, these are all separate pieces. I wanted to isolate these 3, right? I'm gonna press Control F to isolate it. You can see there's like a frame being drawn around our selection, and also we have a new window. And if I wanted to go deeper, I can select, for example, these 2 and Control F, and this one and Control F. It's kind of like a multi-level, multi-step local view in Blender, right? Now, what it means here, this window, right? Multiple and single. Well, we have multiple objects selected, so in multiple mode. And on a mirror, I'm gonna share this in a bit, okay? Well, when you're gonna go back in, you know, step back to see more geometry, so the other pieces, what you need to do is deselect everything, press Control F until you go back. So it's kind of, you know, working in steps. Now the unmirror thing is really cool because what it will do, let me just mirror this across and mirror this one across, okay? Let's say I wanted to focus on these 2 pieces and press Control F, and you can see that automatically the mirror is disabled. If I wanted to enable the mirror, I'm just gonna simply, you know, click on mirror here, and you'll be seeing the mirrored version of this thing, okay? So again, Control F, and we're back here. Now, if you want to focus on a specific item, what you need to do is press F. It's gonna zoom into it, okay? That's what the F key stands for, right? And if you want to focus on the inverse selection of what you have selected, which means anything else than this, you press Control Alt F, and you're gonna focus on all these elements. You can isolate everything but this, right? And we can unmirror this as well. So that's how the focus tool works, guys. All right. The next tool here is mirror, and the shortcut keys again. You can see here Shift Alt X, Y, and Z. I don't see a point of using that tool because I'm using hard ups, which is way faster, and fewer keys because I press Alt X. But if you really wanted to, you could just, you know, go with the machine tools mirror. So press Shift Alt and X, and you can then choose the axis. It's very slow and unintuitive in my opinion because it's kind of like Blender mirror, to be honest. There's nothing really special about this. What I do use though is a symmetry mirror from Mesh Machine, because when I press Alt X, it's extremely quick. Okay, so that's, you know, that's the mirror I'm using. But the mirror from Machine Tools, I think, is pretty much obsolete in terms of usefulness when you're using hard ups, because it's just so much more intuitive, this mirror, and you can do so much more with it, especially if you you know, enable the hidden menu by pressing tab. So you got some serious options in here in this mirror. So yeah, I'm not gonna be talking about mirror from Machine Tools because genuinely there's no point. Alright guys, next tool is gonna be align, and this one is actually pretty cool. So let me just enable it here. So if you go to Machine Tools, simply go to Align, enable it, save prefs. Now Align shortcut is the same as for the Align pies. The only difference is that the Align pies you are using in edit mode, right? So Alt A. But the Align tool you're using in object mode. So Alt A. And you see that there's Machine Align. So let's talk about it, okay? Also, I want to enable scale. There we go. So let's say that you have this cube here, and we're gonna move this cube somewhere here and rotate it, scale it, and, you know, make it longer. And I wanted to align these two objects together. So what I do is I grab this cube, shift click on this one, Alt A, and then I can choose what to do. Now this one align the scale, rotation, and location, which means I scale this cube accordingly to the cube here, which is rotated it and move the location, which means now I have literally a duplicate on top of it because this cube got scaled, moved, and rotated, right? Let me just reset that. If I'm going to align only rotation and location, so Alt A, and uncheck the scale, you can see what happens, right? So you can then, you know, choose different axes, etc., etc. So really powerful tool, very simple, but this is some serious stuff. And I have here chosen active, but you can also choose different options here. So, you know, origin, cursor, active, etc. So on the cursor, on the world's origin, on the floor, you know, or to active object, right? This is what active means. So the last selected, right? But there's a new tool with this add-on, and the new tool came with 1.0 edition, and it's really bonkers. I mean, this is crazy. Okay, so watch this. You have a cube here, and I'm gonna scale this and actually scale it up and extend it here. And I'm going to create something here on top, all right? And then scale it even some more and create something here, and, you know, mirror this to the other side, okay? And then what I want to do is I wanted to create another element here like this, which is going to be much smaller and also rotated, okay? Like that. And now what I want to do is I want to move these elements on top of this, align them, and actually scale them accordingly. So watch. I'm going to select all these, plus the element they lay on. Okay, so this is the one they actually aligned to. So I'm going to select the elements I want to move, then the elements that aligned on, right click, and click on Align Relative. And then you click and you hover over an element you want to move it to, and, you know, and you press space, and you're done. And look at this. This is amazing. It actually scales this, moves this, rotates this, and aligns this. I mean, this is fucking crazy. So I think this is absolutely genius. So there you go. That's an align tool in a nutshell. All right, let's talk about groups. So let's enable it, and you can see that there is a menu here, and by default the settings are like this. Okay, so the sub menu is disabled. I'm going to actually enable it and show you what it does. And this one creates prefixes and suffixes for the group names for the empties. I'm gonna disable it, okay? Save prefs and, let's go. So to create a group in Blender, what you need to do, you need to have at least 2 objects. You select one, shift select the other one, Control P, and then you set the parent relationship, right? Now Machine Tools, how it works, you simply right click and you see this is the sub menu. Normally the menu would be here, but I think it's a bit congested. I prefer it to be separated here. And all the options that you can actually use in current state are highlighted, the rest is going to be grayed out. So the only thing we can do is now group it, right? And you can see that we're going to have this empty created by Machine Tools here in the middle. And if I right click now, I have a lot more options here to choose from. Alternatively, what you can do is open the Machine Tools menu here, collapse all this junk and open the group menu. So we're going to be using this because it's easier to see. So now, first of all, before we start, I want to tell you that this group tool is available in free version of Machine Tools, but the Show Group Gizmos option is only for the paid version Deus Ex. And if you're a rigger or you want to pose your models, I would suggest you get this one because it's really good. We're going to be talking about it in a minute. So how this whole thing works, right? So first of all, what you can do is you can, of course, ungroup it. That's logical. Group it back up. And then you can duplicate the group, right? Very easily. Let me just delete that. Now, if I deselect everything, you can see that the empty is gone. You can recall it by simply toggle this off. And you can select the entire group by simply clicking on an empty. And you can also disable the auto select, which is basically going to disable the selectability of everything when you click on a gizmo. And the recursive is actually relating to hierarchies. So let me show you. If I create another cube, right, and move it here and create another group out of this, if I'm going to group these two together like that, it's going to create another group out of it. But if I'm going to add to group, this empty is going to become a child of this parent empty. So add to group, and you can see there is a parenting line, and there's also the size of this gizmo changed. It's smaller, you see that? This means it's actually dependent. So when I now select this, everything gets selected, unless I'm going to turn this recursive off, which means it's going to select the empty, but not the objects in that group. So that's how it works, all right? And of course, you can remove stuff from groups. So I can remove this one from this group, but this group is going to be still intact, meaning it's an independent group, okay? So I got 2 groups, all right? So now let's talk about this option here, which is really bloody awesome, okay? So this option means that you can adjust the empty itself. So if I turn it on, I toggle it on, I can now rotate, scale, or move my empty independently of anything else in that canvas, right? This is great for, rigging, posing, whatever, right? Enable it again, boom, and it's just baked now, okay? The groupify, which is grayed out, is going to be for you whenever you want to bring some groups from all the blend files, which were created in a traditional fashion, meaning they are basically, objects basically parented to an empty. And if I do that, you see automatically when I select an empty, that's actually governing some group. I can groupify it, which will turn it into a Machine Tools empty, okay? Let's talk about gizmos because these are bloody awesome, okay? So let's adjust this. Let's press Alt-R to reset the rotation and Alt-G to reset the location. Maybe let's move it somewhere here, okay, and just lock it. Now, what I can do is I can show group gizmos, okay, and by default it's actually turned on. And the moment you select an axis on which you want the gizmo to work, you'll start seeing gizmos. So if I'm gonna, for example, select this empty here and press Z, I'll see the Z-axis gizmo, so I can actually click on it and start rotating my entire group. I can also recall it, which means reset it to 0, or I could set a new rotation point, so I could rotate it here and set it, and now this is gonna be my default rotation point. This bulb here, when you start rotating something, is going to become grayed out. And when you recall it back to original position, or you're going to set it to a new position, it's going to become lit again. And now you can hide all the empties, right? And you can only see the gizmos, which is pretty bloody cool. So now let's just select this, double click here with shift, and we're going to add gizmo to this one, okay? Let's say x-axis. Now we can hide the empties, and now we are left with the gizmos. So pretty bloody cool stuff, right? And you can see that when you start manipulating with one gizmo, the other ones are temporarily being disabled, so toggled off. So really cool stuff. And now you can also change the size of it, and when you do that, you can actually bake the size, which means reset the scale to 1. So kind of like, you know, scaling an object and Control A and resetting scale is the same thing, because the scale is going to get reset back to, you know, to 111, right? So that's what it does, right? It's the same thing. Okay, guys, and I think that would cover the group tool in machine tools. Alright, guys, next one on the list is going to be Smart Drive. So let's enable it, and let's save preferences, okay? Again, with Smart Drive, just like with most of the tools, you can have access here to this panel on the N panel. So when you press N on the machine tools, you can access Smart Drive. The way it works, you simply create a driver, and then you create an object that you want to drive. And you first set the driver. So let's say if I'm gonna move this driver on Z axis, right? So up, okay, from this location, so select the location to, let's say, this location, right? Then this one's gonna move on Y axis, okay, from this location to, let's say, this location, right? And then you select the driver, the driven, and you drive it. And then when I move this, the other one's gonna move with it. So that's it basically, okay? I'm never gonna be using it because I'm not really into drivers, but you know, if that's something you'd like to do, there you go. That's how you do it. Okay, guys, the next one's gonna be the Asset Browser Tools, which is actually linked to the new Asset Browser feature for Blender 3.0. So the Asset Browser, how it works in Machine Tools, it basically allows you to create assets from collections, because in Blender 3.0 and 3.1 you cannot do that. It will be available in Blender 3.2. So what you can do basically is select multiple objects, and then go to Control S, the Save By menu, or you can simply go to the End panel here and go to Machine Tools and collapse all these panels again and access the Asset Browser Tools and create Assembly Asset. So you can go either here or here under Control S, right? Now this menu is gonna pop, and you see here that you can create an assembly asset. You can name this. You can move it to a specific catalog if you have catalogs created. And then you can remove, for example, backups for decals and mesh machine stashes. And you can also decide how this collection is going to be imported. And then you can also render a thumbnail, but it will not be automatically assigned. You will have to actually link it to your asset. Click OK, and there you can see that the assembly asset was created. So now if I'm going to go here to my asset library, asset browser, you can see that it's been created. So if I'm going to save this file into my asset lib folder, I'm going to name it T1, right? So let's name it T1, and you can see that I have this actually linked here under asset browser. So if I go to file path, my asset library is asset lib, right? So that's it. And then you can of course create categories, etc. But anyway, you will be able to actually bring this asset into your scene. So let me just create a new collection here, which I'm gonna call this assembly, and we're going to move this this one into assembly, and we're gonna save this. All right, so save it, right? Save it, and I'm going to reset my Blender and open my asset library. And now by default, you know, it defaults to a current file which is empty, so I need to actually switch to user library. And you can see that now I have this assembly asset ready to be dropped into the scene. So this is how it works, okay? you can just drop the entire collection. Okay guys, the next one on the list is gonna be the file browser assistant. So you enable this one here, right? File browser assistant. And now the way this works in with machine tools, you simply open a file browser here, or you could go with Control S and open. And now in Vanilla Blender you can switch, toggle the display here, change different modes. In with machine tools you can just press 1, 2, 3. You can also press Shift 3 to toggle between different sizes of these thumbnails, and you can press O to display the folder location of this file, and that's about it. Okay, the next one in line is going to be render. So if you're going to enable this under tools, here you will see that you're gonna have this additional menu here, and if you have shading pi enabled, you're gonna have this bottom menu here as well. So let's talk about it. So let's save it and let's go here. So I don't really see myself using this tool for many reasons. One of them is gonna be that because this tool is saving stuff in EXR format, and I'm using TIFF, and I don't really see the point of EXR. I know it's a better quality a little bit. There's a bit of work that always needs to be done in Photoshop when you bring EXR, and it just annoys the hell out of me. I don't want to work with EXR, so I work with TIFFs and they're perfectly fine, okay? TIFF 16-bit, it's all you need. You don't need the EXRs, in my opinion. Now, what this add-on also will do, it will change the settings of compositor, and that really pisses me the fuck off, because I have my compositor set to denoising, and I don't really need this garbage. And finally, this is mainly for artificial lighting, which is something I don't use unless using Eevee, but mostly rendering in cycles, so for me this is pointless. So to be honest, I don't really see myself using it, but I'll tell you what it does. So under render settings, you get these new options here: quick render, which is going to be a test render, and you can see the additional options here, and final render. Now what the final render will do, it will save the render in the same folder where you have this blend file saved, in a special folder, and the file is gonna be EXR. Okay, so that's what it does, right? And on the lights here, you can also access the render settings, right? You can change the seed render count, which basically is fixing the fireflies problem, so like the small dots of light on your render. But again, I don't have this problem because I'm using denoiser. The only thing that I really like about this add-on is that here, this option, which will allow you to, not this one, sorry, this one, which will allow you to maintain the same amount of, the same strength of lights between Eevee and cycles. Now, when you set lights in Eevee, and you render, and then you're going to switch to cycles and render, cycles artificial lighting is going to be way stronger. So what this add-on will do, it will actually automatically set the strength of the lights when you are rendering. Okay, so this is pretty cool, and you can actually set it up in the pi menu. You can turn it on in here, but you need to have the shading pi from machine tools enabled. Okay. And the last thing that is really cool is that when you disable a light in viewport, and when you're gonna click render, you'll automatically see that this light's gonna be disabled. You see that this light's gonna be automatically disabled here under render. So you don't have to actually click twice, because normally what you need to do, right? Let me just switch it off. There we go. Normally what you need to do is you need to, turn off a light here and to see how it looks. And if you don't like it, then you disable it in render. So if you want to switch lights off very quickly, you can just drag your mouse down and it's going to disable them in render automatically. So yeah guys, for me this is something that definitely I'm not going to be using, especially because it messes up with my compositor. And next tool is going to be smooth. That's going to be a really quick one, guys. This works for sub-D and Korean bevels. Okay, so when you're running sub-D and Korean bevels, you can just toggle on and off smooth. Now the shortcut here is Alt-Tab, but for me it actually switches windows, just like it says here. I'm gonna remap it temporarily to Shift-Alt-V, okay, because I'm not gonna be using it anyway. So what it does, it just basically toggles on smooth, okay, for sub-D and Korean bevels. And you can also toggle overlays here, so you can switch it off so the overlays will not be toggled, right? Because what it does, it toggles the overlay here when it turns on. And that's it. Okay guys, next tool is gonna be clipping toggle. So let's go. Now if you're gonna go to key maps, clipping toggle is somewhere here. There we go. And we're just gonna assign a key to it. I'm gonna go with Shift Control V again here, or Shift Alt V. I can reuse this shortcut. So what it will do basically, it will toggle between three states of your clipping view. So you can set it here, by the way. So this is your clipping view, right? Clip start. And it will toggle between them. And you can actually set the default values here. So let's set it to 0.1, okay? So the clipping toggle, basically what it does, right? It's when you are working somewhere in a close proximity to geometry. And let's say that you zoom in really closely, okay? Really closely. And your geometry starts clipping like this, right? So you can see the inside of it. You can very quickly toggle between these views. Now the reason why would you want to use that is because if you, for example, work with decals, okay, and I don't even know if I have decals installed here. I do. Okay, cool. Let's just drop some decal, okay, here, right? And occasionally, when you work with a clipping toggle that is at a value that's gonna be, you know, sort of creating problems like this. You see like how this decal becomes a little bit muddy here. If I switch this to, you know, closer one, you see that disappears. So you might be good for previewing geo, but when you preview in decals, you might want to switch it. So this is why this is kind of useful, okay? Alright guys, next tool is gonna be surface slide. So let's just save prefs, and this one is under mode spy, okay? So you don't need a key for that. So when you have, let's say, let's grab a sphere, it's gonna be better. So quad sphere. And let's say that we wanted to shift specific faces a little bit on the sphere. So we wanted to move the topology, but we wanted to maintain the curvature. What this tool will do, here you can enable it by pressing tab, right? So it's under your mode spy. You can actually move this, right, with G key on the surface, of course to an extent, right? But it will kind of like a shrink wrap temporarily to the surface, and you can actually shift it. You can move it, you can also rotate it, which is pretty bloody interesting because it actually sticks to the surface. You know, there's going to be a tiny distortion, of course, because you're changing the topology of the entire sphere. But this could be pretty useful if you want to, for example, nudge your geometry a little bit left or right without actually worrying about distorting a curved surface. So there you go, that's it. Next one is going to be apply, but I'm not going to be covering this because it's an old tool and actually Blender sort of fixed its problem, so it's kind of almost obsolete. Now what it was doing, it was allowing you to apply transformations like scale, rotation, location to a parent object without affecting a child. But Blender now can do that. You can still use it for bypassing the bevel scale, but I don't know why would you want to do that, since, you know, this is the reason why we apply, for example, scale to just, you know, create a uniform bevel. Because when you scale something, right, here, when you scale something, let's say on x-axis, and you're gonna create a bevel, this bevel gonna be affected by scale. Okay? So when we're gonna apply that scale, you know, bevel's gonna behave properly. So to be honest, at the moment this tool is kind of obsolete, so I'm not gonna be covering it. Next tool, we're gonna talk about material picker, and we're gonna talk about select. Okay, let's talk about them together because they're very small. So now material picker is really cool and interesting. So let's say you have an object here and there's a matte on it, and there's a different object here with a different matte, right? And let's just make this a little bit, there we go. And we wanted to, you know, copy that matte to these two objects. So what I would need to do normally, I would need to select these two and go to my materials and copy matte, right? So select these two, select the one I want to copy from, and copy, okay? Now what this tool can do for you is you can select objects you want to copy to, and then right click and you click on material picker, and you simply pick the matte from an object. But to copy that, you need to hold Alt, okay? So one more time, right click, material picker, hold Alt and click, and you're done, okay? And that's how it works. And if you go to shading tab, you can see that material picker here. So you can just click on it and boom, right? So there you go. Now let's talk about this select tool, right? So select tool is interesting. So let's say you have a really complicated scene, because you really need to envision something complicated, because in simple scenes it doesn't make any sense, but in complicated scenes they actually can be useful. So let's say we got a scene here, we got a lot of mirrors going on, so I'm gonna mirror this across this one, and let's say we're going to, whoa, duplicate this cube somewhere here, and we're gonna mirror this as well, and then we're gonna duplicate this sphere here, and this sphere is gonna be not mirrored. Okay, so I'm gonna unmirror this. All right, so now if I wanted to select, you know, let's say I got a lot of these spheres here just scattered around, right? And if I wanted to select the mirrored objects, you know, this is a bit fucking confusing, right? So what you can do is right click and select center object, which will select only the mirror objects. Okay, so everything that's mirrored, right? And the wire one, so you can select also wired objects. It's working fantastically for cutters, so you can right click and select wired objects. So if you have anything shaded to wire, so if I change this, you know, here to shade wire, they're automatically gonna be selected. So wire objects, right? So you can select all the cutters. So there you go. That's how this tool works. Alright guys, next tool is gonna be Mesh Cut. I think Mesh Cut is completely obsolete when you're using hard ups, because it's basically a knife tool. So you select one object, shift select the other, right, and then right click, and from the context menu choose Mesh Cut, which will basically cut this object as a knife. Now if you're using hard ups and box cutter, you know this is extremely easy, because you simply draw a cut, press K, and you're done. And if you want to do it with a cube, you can do the same thing. Shift select here Q, booleans, and knife. So I do not see using this tool at all. So if you're using hard ups and box cutter, especially box cutter, you know that one is obsolete basically. But if you don't use hard ups and box cutter, which you should, then you know something to consider using. Another tool, and this is gonna be actually the last proper tool from here, because the other two are just kind of utility things. This one is a thread, and this is a very narrow usage tool which will allow you to convert a cylinder into a screw basically. So you need to be in edit mode, and you need to have selected the loop of faces around your cylinder. Then you right click and you go to machine tools and add thread, and once you do that, you have a window here in which you can just, you know, adjust your screw accordingly and play with it the way you want. So pretty interesting tool. And there you go, that's thread with machine tools. Now the last two tools, the Unity, I'm not going to be covering this because according to machine tools documentation, this tool is currently under sort of testing, so it's not really covered, and it relates to exporting to Unity engine. And the customize is something that you can do here, and you can customize your machine tools and your UI according to machine preferences. So I've never used this and I never will, because I have my own customization, but if you want, you can import machines themes, matcaps, shading, etc., you know, preferences and all that, and customize your blender basically. So use it at your own discretion. Alright guys, well that's it. I think these two videos cover everything you need to know about machine tools. If you need some more detailed information, just hop on the on his website, and actually the recent update for the machine documentation finally has links, so you can actually go to tools, click on a tool, and it will bring you to either a page with a video or just a description, because the information used to be very scattered and still is actually scattered across the internet, so finding all these actually took some time. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks so much for watching, and happy blending.